What's up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. Tropical storm Erin has just formed west of the Cabo Verde Islands. It is expected to become a major hurricane by the National Hurricane Center, and rapid intensification is possible with this system as it traverses the main development region. This is our first big Cape Verde system that we have of the season, and this is a big system we're going to want to watch, especially down the road, as this could potentially impact land. So with that being said, let's go ahead and dive right into it right here. So this is the latest we have. This was designated earlier this morning at 11 a.m. Eastern. Right here, we're going to go ahead and pull up the public advisory. Here's what we have right here. Tropical storm Erin forms just west of the Cabo Verdes. Maximum sustained winds already initially, they went with 45 miles per hour. Normally when you see that, you typically start at around 40 miles per hour with this stuff, but the fact that the NHC right off the bat went from Invest 97L to a 45 mile per hour tropical storm is very telling to say at the very least. It's currently moving very fast too at 20 miles per hour, and it's moving west as well. Its minimum central pressure is 1,004 millibars already. Right here, so we're going to want to pay attention to that. Tropical storm force winds extend outward 35 miles from the center. Those are going to increase in distance as well, so we're going to have to pay attention to this moving forward. Here's what we have with the cone for Erin right here. This is what we got for you right here. It's currently a tropical storm right now. It is expected to remain that way for the next couple of days. Then it's expected to strengthen up to hurricane strength 60 hours out, and then from then on out it's expected to become a major hurricane by Saturday as this heads towards the southwestern Atlantic. So this is a very serious situation that we are going to want to watch, and this is the first cone from the National Hurricane Center too discussing Erin. The fact that they are going at major hurricane strength already is very telling, and you can already say that this has a very high ceiling, and we'll show you that with more model runs later down the road. But let's go ahead and show you the discussion as well and get more into it. The system we have been monitoring that moved across the Cabo Verde Islands over the past 6 to 12 hours, Invest 97L, has maintained a small but persistent area of deep convection. This activity prompted an earlier TAF-B subject Dvorak fix of 2.5 or 35 knots, suggesting the convection has now sufficiently organized to be classified as a tropical cyclone. We've also received scatometer data at 11:07 UTC, that's about 7 a.m. Eastern Time, with a peak wind retrieval of 39 knots embedded into this convection, with ambiguity analysis suggesting the circulation is also well-defined, albeit still somewhat elongated on the eastern edge. The combination of all this data suggests that a tropical storm has formed, and the NHC is initiating advisories on Tropical Storm Erin with a current intensity of 40 knots. And then we need to go ahead and get to the direction of this and then the intensity. Erin is quickly moving to the west with a motion estimated at 17 knots. Over the next few days, this motion should continue with the possibility of some slight south of due west motion. So this is something we're watching right here. We actually looked at this on the models last night, with some of the models wanting this to go further to the southwest instead of just west, and that's what the NHC is noting as well. Erin's motion is primarily influenced by an east-to-west oriented mid-level ridge, and this ridge may start to become more oriented to the northeast of Erin, including which may include a more poleward motion or a bit of a shift towards the north by 5 days. And now this is the main meat we need to get to, because this is very important. And I'll explain to you why in just a second. The intensity forecast in the short term is a little tricky. The earlier scatometer data indicated that the system has a small circulation which could be prone to rapid intensity changes either up or down. While vertical wind shear over the system is forecast to be low, between 5 and 10 knots over the next 72 hours, the sea surface temperatures are more marginal, around 26 to 27 degrees Celsius, which is about 79 to 81 degrees Fahrenheit for those of you living in the United States or the territories, and a decent amount of dry mid-level air along the path of the tropical storm is there. The first NHC intensity forecast will thus only forecast slow intensification in the short term, assuming the marginal SSTs and lack of mid-level moisture will keep the small vortex in check. After 48 hours, however, the SSTs will start to gradually increase and should allow for the local environment of Erin to moisten up. Thus, the rate of intensification will likely increase in the second half of the forecast period. The NHC intensity forecast is a little on the high side of the guidance in the short term, partially due to the initial intensity, but is in line with the HCCA intensity aid. By 120 hours out, the hurricane regional models and statistical dynamical aids show Erin becoming a major hurricane, and that will be explicitly forecasted at the end of the period. That is your biggest update, ladies and gentlemen, based on what we're seeing. And as you can see with the forecast, they initially have this at about 50, 60, 65, 70, kind of going up every 5 to 10 miles per hour for the next 48 hours. Then it really starts to turn up as we get to hurricane strength around 60 hours out. And then 3 days out, we're at already a high-end Category 1, according to the NHC. And then a major hurricane by 5 days out. So that's the big situation we are dealing with right here. And we've been watching it for the last few days for this reason, because this is expected to intensify at a decent rate and is expected to potentially become a major hurricane as it approaches the southwestern Atlantic. So with that being said, let's go ahead now and shift over to some satellite imagery and do some analysis on it. So starting off right here, we have a tropical storm Erin right here. We can go ahead and pull this up based off of the DAPIA website, and then we'll give a bit more of a more nuanced look at this going forward. By the way, seizure warning to those who are prone to flashing lights. I do apologize for this ahead of time, but this is kind of how it operates for the first second, and then it starts to get going from there. But here's what we have for Tropical Storm Erin right here. Erin has been losing some convection. It's still pretty consistent. It's still pretty deep, particularly along the south side of the region right here. It's still quite persistent, but it has leveled off quite a bit. But you interestingly do have pretty decent outflow with this system, and keep in mind this is also still a very small system as well that's going to be moving into some more dry air at this current point, so you're going to want to pay attention to that. But by and large, already a very good starter package for Erin right here, according to DAPIA, as well as on Tropical Tidbits. And as you zoom into the eastern Atlantic right here, we can kind of give you a general idea of what's been happening over the last 10 or so hours. Let's go ahead and show you that. We have basically had very deep convection into the overnight hours in the United States, and it's remained pretty persistent, but it has started to level off some earlier this morning, and then you started seeing another blow up of convection that's kind of been slowly sustaining itself, but it has lost quite a bit of steam since diurnal maximum, as we were talking about on stream last night, and now it has weakened a little bit, and there's actually a good reason for that as well. This system is actually going to be moving into some dry air like the NHC was talking about, and that dry air is very persistent across much of the main development region, and you're going to want to pay attention to see how that pans out. But I am curious to see how this outflow boundary does and kind of how it potentially may mix out some of the Sahara air layer that's over there. So that's kind of your situation. Personally, what I think is a possibility with this, Erin right here, is it may weaken down to a tropical depression, and then kind of potentially an open wave, and then wait until it gets to better conditions, and then start to organize and develop, and then start to re-strengthen from there. That's a possibility my tropical team have been laying out for over the last couple of days as we've watched this evolve. But by and large, the fact that we're already seeing a tropical storm this far east in early to mid-August is pretty telling for what may be potentially happening. That, and we are continuing to see a consistent shift in the models going further and further and further to the south. We were noticing it on stream last night. We'll get to those in just a second, but ultimately the conditions that we have right here are somewhat favorable for development already, despite the fact that we have low sea surface temperatures and we have some dry air impeding it. But the fact that the wind shear out of all things, is the best in that it's playing with it, is pretty interesting. Like the NHC said, 5 to 10 knots. There's virtually no shear, not just right here, but for the next several days. These are in some of the best conditions the Atlantic has to offer for August, and that is something you're going to want to keep an eye on and something you're going to want to hone in on as the days go forward. Now shifting over to the model guidance, we've been taking a quick gander at this moving forward, but we can go ahead and show you both the model guidance and the hurricane runs and give it a bit of an analysis on this. So here's what we have with the European 0Z, and I actually want to go ahead and go back to the 18Z first, just to kind of show you what we've been watching. So the 18Z had this system, well, first of all, it's kind of ahead of schedule right now. It had the system organizing and developing right here, and then starting to slowly intensify as the season and as the system moves through right here. We're already at a 994 millibar system by the time we get to 6 days out. But I kind of want to show you what we've been watching right here. Let's go ahead and show you what we've had at 0Z around this time frame and kind of give you an idea of what has been shifting. So what we've noticed with the trends of this run in particular is we've noticed that the last couple of runs have shifted this further to the west and further to the south every single time. It may not seem like a big difference, but those little differences are starting to add up, and they've been adding up for the last a few days or so. And then we go to the 6Z right here. The 6Z is further to the south and a bit further to the east. So compared to the 18Z, it's actually quite a bit further to the south, as you're noticing. 18Z, 0Z, 6Z slowly getting further and further and further to the south, potentially putting more of the Lesser Antilles in the line of fire. Potentially, if the ridge holds strong and the system does not get impacted by a trough, potentially we could see a situation where this drives towards the Bahamas. We'll have to pay close attention to it. But these small shifts to the south and the fact that we're continuing to see that on average, even as this has continued to evolve, is pretty concerning for me, to say the very least. And what that's telling me is we have a bit of a stronger ridge than expected, and the fact that we're going to continue to see that west-southwestward motion like we've been seeing in a lot of the models already. This kind of reminds me of Hurricane Irma a little bit, where it started to move to the west. It moved a bit more to the northwest. Then it started making a dive towards the southwest, towards the Lesser Antilles. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, this is going to be Irma all over again. Absolutely not. The dynamics are a little bit different compared to what we had back in 2017. But the parallels are kind of there at this current point in time. So that's the European run that we can give you. Here is the GFS. The 12Z is actually a little bit slow due to some internal errors and some internal issues by NOAA, so we are going to have to apologize for that. But the GFS basically was dead on with its initial organization and development. And not a lot of times you can say that with the GFS, but the GFS was spot on with the system getting yanked up to the north and then moving and developing into a tropical storm. So you're going to want to keep an eye on it. And the initialization is actually pretty good with this, and it kind of has the system organizing and moving. It has that west-southwestward jog a little bit as it approaches, and then it gets up to hurricane strength 3 days out, similar to what the NHC has been advocating for, and then it kind of moves north of the Lesser Antilles as a major hurricane, 956 millibars right here. But compare that to the 0Z, yeah, that shift is a little bit further to the south, even from the 6Z as well. The shifts are adding up a little bit. Even from the 18Z, this is the biggest shift that we've had. So at 18Z, this was at around 23.72 degrees north, 61.13 degrees west. Look at it where it is now. It's at about it's actually at about 21.84 degrees north and 61 degrees west. That is a shift of about 100 miles or so further to the south compared to the last 24 hours. That is something big that you're going to want to pay attention to. And the fact that it's doing it at a stronger rate is interesting, to say the very least. Then you have this ridge over here that starts to weaken a bit. You do have this trough that starts to drag it up to the north, and the GFS does have the system staying out to sea, but still, the fact that we're seeing this further to the south and further to the west potentially and this isn't a one-time thing. This has been a consistent trend for the last few days. You're going to want to watch this if you're in the Bahamas and on the east coast of the United States, because each little tick that moves closer to you guys does put you guys more in the line of fire in the long run, and we'll have to keep you updated on that. Canadian run, also kind of interesting. The CMC actually has this pretty close to the Lesser Antilles and Puerto Rico right here, pulling a track similar to Irma, just for a little bit, albeit a lot weaker. So you're going to want to pay attention to that. But the Canadian run is kind of subscribing to the point where it's going to wait to organize and develop and then start to as it gets closer to the Antilles. Compare that to the 0Z. It's definitely weaker, but it's definitely a lot further to the south and further to the west as well. So those are two things you cannot really scoff at, because it's happening with every single model that we've seen right here. That's the Canadian. Icon, we can go ahead and show you that as well. Icon's also pretty interesting. Icon has this kind of remaining relatively weak until it gets towards the Lesser Antilles, but taking a quick look compared to the 0Z, yeah, it's still further south, and it's still a little bit, it's just generally further to the south compared to what we've seen previously, and it really reflects on that as well. So you're going to have to pay attention to that, because every shift we see with this will be very critical, especially in the long run, and that is why we're going to have to keep you updated here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel in that regard. But now let's go ahead and get to the hurricane models, because those are very interesting to take a quick look at. Let's go ahead and start with the H-Wharf, then we'll go to the H-Mon, then the halves runs as well. Here's what we have with the H-Wharf pulled up for you right here. This will be for actually, never mind. We do not have hurricane runs right now from Tropical Tidbits. I do apologize, because this was just designated. They're going to have to reset everything. So, yeah, that's kind of new right here. But either way, we are seeing this system kind of what's generally been agreed to is the system is definitely outperforming expectations for the most part. And it's also shifting further to the south, and we're noticing that southwest wobble for about a day or so. That could potentially put the Lesser Antilles in the line of fire. So that is something you're going to want to watch. We also have track guidance and intensity guidance from the hurricane runs that we can show you as well. This is the track guidance, generally moving more towards the west. It is starting to subscribe a bit more to that southwestern movement, similar to what the NHC is advocating for. And then you're starting to notice it's going to start making that turn towards the north, potentially towards Bermuda in the next 6 days or so. But those have been shifting further and further and further to the west, and kind of been delaying. And that's something you're going to have to pay attention to. Intensity runs, as you can see, the intensity runs are pretty interesting, to say the very least. With the exception of the Halves B run, which wants the system to make a huge run for a Category 5, the majority of the runs want this to develop pretty, not gradually, but rather consistently, getting up to Category 2 to Category 3 strength in the next week or so. And as you're starting to look at this, the H-Wharf and the Halves A definitely start to intensify a bit quicker compared to some of the other runs, but they do start off pretty slow and then start to intensify very fast at that point. So that's a new development that we need to pay attention to right here. But ultimately, my opinion on this is once this enters warmer waters, and the shear is still not going to be an issue. And once it is able to moisten up, Erin is able to moisten up the atmosphere, at least in terms of its mesoscale surroundings, that's when I think we're going to start seeing pretty quick development with this. And I don't really see this developing like boom right away, and then this all of a sudden becomes a Category 2 hurricane by tomorrow. I don't see that happening. It's going to take its time still, and it's going to ultimately wait until it gets to better conditions for it to start really showing the big intensity. But the fact that we're already at a 45-mile-per-hour tropical storm is very concerning for me. And that's something you're going to want to watch. Regardless, this is going to be a very big ace maker as well. You're going to see a lot of tropical activity with this. And Erin is kind of going to be the first big indicator of what the hurricane season is going to bring, because Erin has a very high ceiling with this, because this is the best conditions that the season has to give, at least so far. So those are all factors that we're going to want to pay attention to, and we'll keep you updated here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But with that being said, we're closing the video out right here. We will be live streaming again tonight, starting at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time. Hopefully, we shouldn't have any issues with the internet or latency or anything like that, so we can be good to go with that. So be sure you stay tuned for that. You've been showing mad love and support the last couple of streams, so thank you very much for that. But also, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you are new. The goal, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather. If you would like to help out, hang out, or ask us some questions, feel free to join the Storms United Discord server. The link to that will be in the end screen. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.